Hi, everyone. Welcome to week 5. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to go over the agenda with you so that you will know what lessons and assignments are in store for you this week. Let's go ahead and take a look. Obviously, the first thing you'll need to do is take the week 5 attendance quiz. Remember that the questions on that quiz will be based on the material that we covered in week 4, which was some super important information. So do your best on the attendance quiz. Once you have it submitted, you will then have access to the lessons and some of the homework items for the week. There are release conditions associated with 2 of the assignments, and we'll get to that in just a couple minutes. But you will have access to the lessons right away. The first thing you'll see under the attendance quiz is a brief review of week 4. Then you will see the first lesson for this week, and it is called Drafting Research Papers. I highly recommend going through this lesson. Watch the entire video, look at the PowerPoint, look at the handouts. This is one of the concerns that many students bring up early in the term, is that they struggle with taking their ideas and the information from their sources and actually writing the essay. So in that lesson, I'm going to go through where to start and then how to proceed through the process so that you are in a good place to start drafting the essay. It's super helpful. The next lesson for this week, also super helpful. It is about integrating sources. This isn't necessarily a concern that students bring up. However, it is an issue that many students end up having when I read their rough drafts. And that is, how do you actually incorporate the information from your sources in an effective way and in a proper way? So I go through how to do a summary. And there's a really great 4-step process for how to create a proper paraphrase. That's the one students struggle with the most, but it's the one you should be using most often. And then there's also a section on how to use direct quotes properly. It is a very useful lesson to ensure that you are doing things at least more correctly the first time around, because the more you get right on your rough draft, the less time you have to spend on revisions before you submit the final draft. So all of this information here in week 5 is really geared towards getting you ready to write the rough draft for project part 3, which will be assigned next week. So I highly suggest paying careful attention to both of these lessons, coming back to them if needed, both for the homework this week and as you work on your rough draft. So the homework for this week is there's a 2-part assignment. You can see here we've got integrating sources part 1 and then integrating sources part 2. So integrating sources part 1, there are release conditions for it, and these release conditions apply to integrating sources part 2 as well. Same release conditions for both. You can find them here under the release conditions tab in the getting started area. So integrating sources assignments part 1 and part 2 assigned in week 5, and they will be available to you once you have completed the following. The first thing that needs to be accomplished is that you have submitted project part 2 from last week. So if you still have not submitted project part 2, you are not going to be able to see the assignments here in week 5. So please get that in as soon as possible, not only for that reason, but also because you need my feedback on that. You also need to have, of course, submitted the week 5 attendance quiz. You need to have gone through the lesson on drafting research papers, and you need to have gone through the lesson on integrating sources. So once you have accomplished those 4 things, then you'll have access to both of the integrating sources assignments. Integrating sources part 1 is one of those that is in the quiz section, but graded as an assignment. There will be a video at the top of the page when you begin the quiz. Make sure you watch that video. I explain what each little section of the quiz is all about. Try to have that in by Sunday night. Integrating sources part 2 is in the actual assignments area. So you can get to it here under week 5 module, week 5 homework assignments. You can get to both of them, obviously, integrating sources part 1, integrating sources part 2. Or you can integrating sources part 1, get to it over here in the quiz area. Integrating sources part 2, you can get to it here in the assignments list. Just part 2 is a little trickier to do in the quiz format. Most everything that we've done as homework throughout the term is actually easier in the quiz format, but this particular thing that I'm going to have you practice is not conducive in a quiz format. So that's why it's a two-parter. It's really all the same assignment. It's just the part that was more conducive to quiz format is in quiz format. The part that's not so conducive to quiz format is in a regular assignment format. Okay. So watch the video in the instructions for integrating sources part 2 as well. That one can be very confusing for students if they don't pay attention to the instructions or don't hear me explain it. So please make sure that you do that before you attempt it. Try to have that in by Sunday night. And then, of course, we have week 5 discussion. There'll be a video located in the prompt. Make sure you watch that so you understand what I'm looking for. Read the prompt, have your first post up by Thursday night so that everyone has plenty of time and options to choose from to respond to 2 classmates by Sunday night. The discussion will remain open during week 6, but remember, if you're posting during week 6, it's only for half credit. So do the best you can to get week 5 discussion completed on time so you don't lose out on those points. All right. And I highly suggest getting the other 2 assignments completed on time as well, because next week in week 6, you will be assigned project part 3, which is the rough draft of your paper. So by the end of week 6, you're supposed to have submitted your rough draft. And I'm sure everybody would like as much time as possible to work on that item. So if you get week 5 finished on time, then you're set in week 6 to focus on the rough draft. Okay. All right. That is it for this week. If you have questions or run into any problems, definitely reach out. Otherwise, you're free to go ahead and get started.